What's going on, everyone? I'm Travis Brown with the Eagle. We are here in the Eagle studio for once. Normally, we do these completely over Zoom, but I'm with the man who just got to eat all the boudin balls or whatever he wanted to this weekend in Baton Rouge. That is former Texas A&M defensive lineman Jay Arnold. Jay, you survived Baton Rouge?
I did. Morgantown and Baton Rouge in back-to-back weeks, and somehow I'm still standing.
Yeah, so let's start there. I know you went out to that LSU Ole Miss game and your kind of college football world tour. What was the Death Valley like for you?
Oh man, it was a great experience. I have said that LSU is the best tailgating scene in the nation, and being there for that game with Ole Miss, I mean it was everything you would want and everything you expect. Death Valley was rocking. Obviously, it's a little different when it's not a Saturday night game as opposed to a day game, but I mean, it was still loud in there. And then all the tailgate food and festivities were just incredible.
We'll keep it simple with this one. Let's just go with what the best thing you ate this weekend was, because I want to save the whole LSU experience. We'll do that for when A&M plays LSU. But the best thing you ate this weekend.
Gotcha. Yeah. So the best thing that I had this week at the tailgate or overall was probably the crawfish etouffee that Zach and DVA tailgating prepared. I mean, it was just incredible.
There you go. All right. So A&M goes to South Carolina, longtime defending champion of the Bonham Trophy, and they lose the hardware in South Carolina. Your initial thoughts on what happened, what went on there with the Aggies?
It's tough to win games when you spot the opponent 17 points less than halfway through the first quarter.
Yeah, exactly. Let's start with special teams, actually, because that's kind of what got this whole thing rolling in the wrong direction, was that 100-yard kickoff return. Surprising to you that, I know we talked a lot about open weeks, what happens on those, the focus that happens on things that aren't going right. Surprising to you that the first thing out of the gate was a 100-yard touchdown return?
No, not really. I mean, I think we kind of talked about this in the preview that Shane Beamer places a premium on special teams. And it's something that I think A&M fans, that could have been the key to the game. I think we both touched on that a little bit going into this. And, obviously you don't want to give up a kickoff return, and those plays aren't necessarily common. But I think you had to know going into this one, especially with the success that South Carolina has had in that phase of the game. I mean, blocking a punt against Kentucky, it's something that that they're going to place an emphasis on. So, obviously this is one of those times where it would be perhaps a little bit more advantageous for A&M to have a dedicated special teams coordinator.
Yeah, we'll maybe get into that a little bit more in a second. Let's move on to the offensive line, because I think that's the other portion that people were a little bit confused by. 8 penalties in the game by the Aggies. All of them were false starts. And then you have the weird snap fumble that went over the line that resulted in the second of the points that South Carolina scored in that first 5-minute stretch. I know that Matthew Wyckoff stepped in and he had started this year, but was stepping in for Bryce Foster, who's out for the rest of the season in that game. But it's hard for me to buy the noise level, because they had just come off playing at Alabama. That was a rowdy crowd. You had already played in Mississippi State, where you have the cowbells. Despite what to you looked wrong in that scenario that was causing so much problems, when it seemed like they had gone through these same scenarios already before?
Yeah, I mean, when you change centers there, combine that with the noise, I think that's part of the issue. But it's really concerning to have a problem like this out of the bye week. And I mean, this is as much hype as South Carolina has had around the program since Spurrier left. So I think you look at that and you see you should have been prepared for the noise factor. I mean, the only thing that I can think of where you're not prepared for the noise factor, especially like you said, coming off of Alabama and Mississippi State, is that you just don't expect them to be there, which is kind of crazy to me. Yeah, I mean, we talk about continuity in the offensive line and obviously losing losing Bryce Foster is a big blow, and I think we saw that kind of rear its head there. But it's tough to write off those types of mistakes. When there's 8 false starts in a contest, I mean that's pretty concerning. I'll put it that way.
So what happens next from here? How do they fix that issue? What does practice looks like in this week in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you'd hope with it being a home game that some of those issues are lessened a little bit coming up against Ole Miss. But, there's still a couple road kicks. I think we have Auburn on the road. I'm not sure. Is that the last road game?
That's the last road game, yeah.
I guess LSU's at home. So Auburn's the last one you'll see as far as having that crowd noise be as much of a factor. But, that's something that in practice, I mean, normally the way you would prepare is you're pumping music through the whole time. You want to create that type of loud environment so that offenses are used to working under that kind of that noise and aren't making those mistakes where you're having false starts or bad snaps or things of that nature.
So Layden Robinson said after the game that they were actually going with a audible cadence, not a silent count throughout the course of that game. Surprising to you? And why would you choose to go with the verbal cadence instead of the silent count in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know if that's something that just do you know if they did the silent count for Mississippi State and Alabama?
That I don't know. We were just able to ask them about the game on Saturday.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, the general rule of thumb is on the road in a very hostile environment, you would go with a silent cadence. You wouldn't use a verbal cadence. This is another thing that goes back to, a scheming problem in practice where if you know the crowd's going to be a factor, where verbal cadence may not be necessarily easy to hear, you go to that silent cadence. You have visual cues as opposed to verbal cues, or you do it timing based. And I just, it's hard to justify going with a verbal cadence when a crowd is that loud, and maybe not even making an adjustment at halftime. Right? Like if you realize that the crowd's more of a factor than you expected going in, I think you have to adjust your game plan there at halftime. And obviously it's tough to make that type of adjustment in game. It's not something that's easily done, but when 8 false starts, again, we go back to that number. That's a very, very high number of legal procedure penalties for a Division I football program.
Sure. So on the offense in a whole, though, I actually think that this maybe was, I mean, statistically it pretty much was, but this was the best the offense has looked all season, save for those penalties and those turnovers earlier. What did you take from the offense in this game?
Yeah, I mean, statistically speaking, you look at it and there's some things to draw on at least. I know Jimbo said that Haynes King was going to be available this Saturday against Ole Miss, but you have to wonder if, Connor Wegman's performance there in that last drive before or for the field goal, I mean, was pretty impressive in my mind. I think that's something that you can get a little hope from. Cam Dewberry, I thought, looked good, subbing in there at guard as a true freshman. And then you have a couple more true freshmen in Evan Stewart and Donovan Green, who were big factors in the receiving game. So there are things that I think you can draw from going forward, but the turnovers are really what was the killer here. The snap and that interception really set the tone for the game, and A&M just wasn't able to dig themselves out of that hole. I mean, you look at it. There's there's a touchdown off of special teams with the kick return. There's a touchdown off of that fumble with the snap, and then there's I think they got 3 points while in that interception. So those 17 points, I mean, if you eliminate those turnovers, it's a completely different ball game, I think, especially with the way that A&M had a little bit more success moving the ball. I think I maybe would have liked to see them go to the run a little bit more, but obviously because of the state of the game and what the score dictated. I think they had to air it out a little bit more than maybe they would have even liked to.
Defensively, go back to the four-man front or stay with the four-man front. Able to get a little bit of pressure. Did you like what you saw from the defense? What stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, there were still some times where Spencer Rattler had a little bit too much time. And the opponent coming up in Ole Miss, I mean, it's another situation where the quarterback will make mistakes if you put pressure on him. Fadil Diggs did have that strip sack, which was a huge moment in the game, really gave A&M a lot of hope. We still have to get more pressure to really be effective. But I mean, I was impressed with them, except for that last drive that South Carolina, last scoring drive they had. I mean, A&M was stuffing the run. I think at halftime, A&M had outgained South Carolina on the ground 99-18 or something like that. And, there's still some stuff to work on the defense too. I know that, when South Carolina was able to get to the edge, there was a few missed tackles on the edge. That's something that can be improved on in practice. But overall, I mean, I was happy. I think the middle of the defense with McKinley Jackson back is just night and day different. I think that's been a huge factor in why A&M has been better against the run. And obviously, I mean, 118 yards, it's not – South Carolina averaged 3.4 yards carry. So you look at that, and, I mean, that's a good number for this defense.
So it's one of those situations where if you go with your gut as a former player, as an A&M fan, I'm sure the loss to South Carolina, a not very good South Carolina team, and the way that it happened early, it's a kick in the shorts. And I think with the culmination of the season probably doesn't necessarily feel great, as a full body of work. But statistically, it did seem like you said, that there were some improvement, some steps moving forward. How did you digest this kind of as a whole body of work, like I said, and it with the eyes kind of towards the future of the season?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this it's a little bit worrisome because now it's a battle to get to bowl eligibility. There's no guarantee, or I mean, you don't want to guarantee anything in college football, but there's no likely win, or I'll say over 75% win chance other than in UMass on the schedule. I mean, you look at the rest of the season, Auburn hasn't been great, but they've been putting up fight at least. Florida is in a similar situation where they're at least hanging tough with opponents. And then LSU's coming off a big win against Ole Miss. And there's no guarantees left in this season. Obviously, it helps a lot that you're going back home for these next stretch of games. But I think you look at the performance, and while there is some stuff to draw on and say, well, this looked good, it's still disappointing to be under 500 at this stage of the season, especially coming off of a loss to a South Carolina team that you haven't lost to since joining the SEC. I mean, 8 straight games for that Bonham Trophy, right? That A&M had won going into this one, and it's not ideal. And I don't want to take too much away from South Carolina either, because they did. I mean, it was Beamer ball to a T, right? It was special teams. I mean, hats off to the South Carolina punter as well. I think he did a great job pinning A&M deep. South Carolina was winning the field position battle all night. So they definitely did some things well. But if you're A&M, it's just kind of a culmination of what this season has been up to this stage.
So let's pull back the curtain a little bit on the player aspect of this. We talked to Max Wright today, the tight end. Talked a little bit about this streak that they've had away from home. With the bye week included in there, it's been months since A&M has played at Kyle Field. He mentioned how they didn't even really expect how hard that would be, kind of citing some of the other things away from the football field when it comes to school, when it comes to just traveling and being in a hotel and living out of a suitcase. What was that travel experience like for you? I don't have the schedule pulled up from when you were playing. I don't know if y'all had any of the really long stretches of a road games, and what maybe delve into a little bit of what Max was saying there. At what makes so many road games back to back a challenge?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's just a little bit easier when you have that home field advantage, right? For that noise aspect, like we saw with the 8 false starts. But it's also, I mean, like Max touched on, it's the academic side of things. I mean, it's not sleeping in your own bed. It's going out and, it's unfamiliar territory. Sometimes some of those hotels that you stay in aren't necessarily, they don't have the best food. They don't have whatever that you may be used to back in College Station. And it's just an adjustment, right? You're not in the same routine where you're going to the same hotel that you have a little bit of familiarity with. I mean, the best teams are going to be able to combat that kind of disadvantage, but it is a challenge. And I don't think we ever did have a long stretch of road games quite like that while I was at A&M. But there's a lot of factors that go into getting a team ready on the road that you may not necessarily think of for a home game. I mean, there's equipment, medical staff, all that stuff has to go, has to be transported to the stadium. I mean, you're dealing, like Max said, with classes and you're going to have to get notes to professors to excuse you from class. I mean, there's a lot of different factors that go into a road game that make it a little bit more of a challenge than a home game.
Sure. So with this game coming up against Ole Miss, you as a defensive lineman got to like going up against the kind of running backs that Ole Miss has in Evans and Judkins. What do you see from that matchup? Did you see anything from the A&M defensive front against South Carolina that proves to you that maybe that run defense is heading in the right direction? Because it's probably going to be the matchup of the game unless you see another different matchup that stands out.
Yeah, no, it's going to be about getting this Ole Miss team to obvious passing downs. Zach Evans and Jalen Judkins are two extremely good running backs, and they're both good out of the backfield as receivers as well. So that's going to be a challenge for sure. You want to hope, or at least I personally hope that 4-man front sticks around. I think that'll be a help. And then when you get to those obvious passing downs, I was saying it earlier, the thing I saw from Jackson Dart is, a younger quarterback, if A&M is able to get pressure on him, he does have a tendency to get a little reckless with his throws. Sometimes the ball security can be an issue. So when I'm looking at this, the key is going to be stopping Evans and Judkins early on in the possession, and then getting to those obvious passing situations. And if A&M's, if the crowd shows up at Kyle Field, if the 12th man's getting loud as well, that could help a little bit too. But you look at all this, and I saw an Ole Miss team that is dangerous, but has some flaws. So we'll see if A&M's able to capitalize on that or not. Obviously, I think the defense has a chance to keep them in this game. It's the same story that we've had all year. The defense can keep them in this game if A&M can take care of the ball.
Well, it's that time, probably the best time, especially with some of the ways the season has gone. Jay, what's your meal for coming back home against Ole Miss?
Well, you're coming back home to Texas, so I'm just going to go with a classic Texas Trinity barbecue spread. Get your brisket, get your ribs, get your sausage. Get back in the mind state of being in Texas, being at home, and get back in the win column.
There you go. So you mentioned that the Trinity of barbecue. I'm actually a big turkey guy. Where does turkey fall in this? Just fill me in here. As Alex Miller, who's producing
with the
this,
turkey
is
shortage. It may not fall onto the tray at all. But no, I mean, turkey is underrated. And some of the places around Texas do just fantastic versions of smoked turkey. But you can do some fun things with it as a sandwich after the fact too. I like to do like a little leftover smoked turkey barbecue sandwich. Get a little Cholula and mayo, mix that together, and you make like a spicy mayo on toast with the turkey sandwich. It's pretty good. It just elevates it a little bit, right?
Yeah, Alex Miller, who's our resident food reporter here at the Eagle, is producing this. He's back in the corner, just shaking his head at me when I mention turkey. But like, I am not the barbecue guy that you two guys are. I like it, but I'm not like the connoisseur. But I lean on turkey, and I lean on like a good pork loin. Like I like your like if there's the alt rock of barbecue, that's kind of where I live.
So, you got your brisket and your ribs and your sausage. That's like your offense and your defense. You go to your special teams. You have the phase of the game that you may not think of as much, but it's still important to have good poultry products like turkey. It's still important to have maybe alternative meats like a pork loin, which had a great smoked pork loin at Opie's in Spicewood back last month. So I agree with you there, Travis. I mean, the thing about Texas barbecue now too is the pit masters take their craft so seriously that there's not going to be a bad meat on the menu. And if you're a turkey guy, it's a good time to be well, it was until it started disappearing, but it's a good time to be a Texas barbecue fan, no matter which meat's your favorite.
You thought you'd come to this video and you're going to talk about all three phases of the game, but we really were going to talk about all three phases of the barbecue game. That's what you get with Jay Arnold. Jay, buddy, thanks so much for joining us again this week.
And thank you for having me.
You got it. Be sure to check theeagle.com for more content leading up to that Ole Miss game this weekend. Thanks.